Hello there, and welcome to the LML Show. Today we are moving focus from movie to video game, and we're talking Star Wars Battlefront 2. Star Wars Battlefront 2, that being a first-person shooter set in the world of Star Wars, and developed by EA DICE. The game, which came out in 2017, is the sequel of Star Wars Battlefront, which came out in 2015, and it's also the spiritual remake of the homonymous game, which came out in 2005, which I hope some of you really got to play, because that was a really fun game, I have to say. Even though this game, as a single-player campaign set after the 6th episode of the saga, The Return of the Jedi, the focus of the game is very much the online multiplayer battles. It's very much about battling with other people in the Star Wars universe. The multiplayer has a lot of different modes spanning throughout the 3 main eras of Star Wars: the prequels, the originals, and the sequels. Now, for those of you who have already played the game, who know what I'm talking about, this may not be a video really for you. This video is primarily aimed at those who have maybe not caught up on the game yet, who have never tried it, who love Star Wars, who maybe like first-person shooters and never got the chance to try out this game. And I want to ask, is it worth it to get a game that came out 5 years ago in 2021? Well, let's talk. What was lacking in the first Star Wars Battlefront from 2015, which always kept me away from buying it, was lack of a single-player campaign. Therefore, when they announced that the sequel would have a single-player campaign, I was very excited. Especially after they showed the trailer with the cool graphics, which was mind-blowing for me, because being able to see, to play in the Star Wars universe with those graphics for me was incredible, considering the best game I had played so far in terms of graphic might have been The Force Unleashed, which I mean, great game, but still PS3 graphics. And the idea of playing with a special Imperial agent, Agent Iden Versio from the Inferno Squad, was very, very interesting to play from an Imperial perspective after the death of Palpatine. In the end, I did manage to get my hands on the game. I played the whole campaign. Now, was it that incredible, amazing experience that I was really hyped for back in the day? Not really. Not really, no. Now, who played the game knows, and who hasn't played the game doesn't deserve to be messed with. The single-player campaign is not that amazing. It's not that great. It's still nice, it's still fun, but it's not as incredible as it could have been. It's very quick, only a few hours of gameplay actually, it won't take a lot from you. It's very nice visually, I can say they delivered on that. There are some sequences which are really, really good looking to play throughout. And it's still pretty enjoyable, especially when they let you play as famous Star Wars characters, because the story kind of goes between the main character, Iden Versio, and then lets you play as famous Star Wars characters. And those sequences in particular are very, very nice. The gameplay is dynamic, it's fun, it's a first-person shooter gameplay, so pretty standard for what it is. But the plot really suffers from some key major decision which kind of ruin its potential and what it could have been, really. And also there are some characters in the story which do some things that really I still am questioning myself about. Not very well developed characters at all. It's not very well developed characters at all. The campaign on its own could be talked about in a separate video just to analyze what's going on, but that's a topic for another day. Summarizing though, it's the direction of the plot which kind of ruins itself and the premise of the story, and therefore doesn't make the campaign all that much enjoyable as it could have been, which is a pity because there was some really interesting premise there. And on that note, we can say something nice about this campaign. Something nice on behalf of the nerds. What we can say is that the campaign introduces us to some new and interesting pieces of Star Wars lore, which are an important part of the new Disney canon. I understand this part of the video might be very Star Wars nerd specific, but bear with me. It introduces us to a new piece of Star Wars lore which is very interesting, specifically Operation Cinder, which is then quoted in The Mandalorian, the TV series, that being said to make you understand how important this part of the story is to the Star Wars canon that Disney has developed. And the initial sequences of the campaign are the most interesting, unfortunately, but they really are, because they show us what happens after Palpatine's death, after Vader's death, and how the Imperial fleet reacts to the loss of its top hierarchy, how it deals with the consequences of this defeat, because, you know, Palpatine's dead, Vader's dead, but all the fleet is still there, so what are they gonna do now? And it shows us that, and it's very, very interesting. It's a very cool idea, especially seeing it from a special Imperial agent's perspective. Very cool material there that could have been explored a lot better, but the initial sequences really, really shine, and they're really, really cool. Is it enough to justify buying this game at full price just to play single player campaign? No. No, not really. You don't do that. You'd be disappointed if you wanted to buy the game just for the single player campaign. However, if you buy the game because you want to play the multiplayer for all the reasons that we are gonna outline now in the next chapters of the video, and you also have the single player campaign, now that's definitely a nice addition. I would say all play it if you're gonna buy the game. It's not enough to justify the purchase of the game, but it's definitely a nice addition, and it does add some nice pieces to Star Wars lore, which are definitely gonna be appreciated by those of you who like Star Wars. Unfortunately, Star Wars Battlefront 2 will not receive any more updates. That's what the developers have said at a certain point, therefore you'd think that the player base would reduce itself in a game with no more updates, but you'd be wrong. As a matter of fact, even though the game is 3 years old and it won't receive any more updates, the community is as strong as ever. Actually, in the past months, it grew considerably. That due to the fact that the game was added finally on Steam and that it was released for free on PlayStation through PlayStation Plus. Statistics data show us that in June 2020, 6.6 million users were active on Star Wars Battlefront 2 just on PlayStation. While on the other hand, PC gamers will be happy to know that Steam charts tell us that the player base has recently increased up to 4,000 players each month. There's also a pretty active modding community in the US, which do some pretty nice stuff. I will leave some examples here, but pretty nice. Therefore, to those who might be scared because of the lack of updates, I can tell you that the community is as active as ever and that you will definitely find players to enjoy those huge multiplayer battles that Star Wars Battlefront 2 promises you. Well, that was true in June 2021 when that was written. Yes, I know, I need to work on timing. But now the community is reducing itself. After the highest peak of 10,000 players in January 2021, it's now gone down to around 2,000 players, and it's stable more or less, but there's a possibility that it will go down anymore. Clearly, the lack of updates and new games coming out are kind of killing the player base a little bit, but you'll still find players to play with at the moment. There's plenty enough. I haven't found any more recent data on PS4 or Xbox, but that's what I could find from Steam charts about the gamers on PC. So if you wanted to enjoy the multiplayer battles, the earlier you buy it, the best it would be, because we don't know when the player base would actually definitely die. There still is people, but the initial hype from when the previous bit was written is clearly died off, and therefore it's something that you can consider when thinking about whether you would want to try the game now or not. The game has about 10 different game modes. Some are nicer than others, and some are more played than others, obviously. All the game modes can be played either as a soldier, with our 4 different types of soldiers with blasters, or as the heroes of the saga, Luke Skywalkers, etc, etc, etc. The 4 classes of soldiers would be Assault, Sniper, Officer, and Heavy, which are basically just a classical guy with a blaster, a sniper, a support, and a damage guy. You can play in small games with 8-16 people with death matches like Call of Duty or extraction games, but you can also play stuff like the Ewok Hunt, which is where a bunch of stormtroopers has to deal with a bunch of little murderous teddy bears. Now, I've never found that to my liking, but I can see the appeal of it, and maybe that's something for you. There are offline modes and co-op modes, as well as space battles with spaceships and fighters, but I have found them not great. I don't think the controls work very well, and the feeling it gives you, I found it a bit boring and nauseating, like you keep just moving around and nothing much is happening. That's my personal take, but I don't think they're very well done in this game. Hopefully they did them better in Squadrons, which I still have to try. The 2 biggest game modes, Supremacy and a Galactic Assault, are worth speaking of in their own little section of the video, which is coming up soon. And the last modes you can experience are the ones with the heroes of the saga, which can be played in battles 2v2 or 4v4, where the light side heroes face off against the dark side heroes. Each type of hero and of soldier can be upgraded with cards which improve their abilities and their power, and these cards can be obtained leveling up in the game as you play through with it. So basically there's a lot going on in this game. There's a lot of different type of experiences you can have playing this game, and even though I only use 4 or 5 of this game modes, you might use ones that I hate and vice versa. But that's something you can consider when thinking about this game, that there are a lot of different experiences you can have, and hopefully there's something that can cater to your personal taste whilst leaving out the stuff you just don't like. Now I'd like to talk about the heroes a little bit more in detail. In the game we have access to 22 heroes, 11 of the light side of the Force and 11 from the dark side of the Force. The light side characters are Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, Rey Nobody, Yoda, Finn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and BB-8! Because obviously BB-8, the best fighting character in the whole Star Wars universe, as you know. It's like playing with a little bouncing ball with aluminium and rage problems. They could have used Ahsoka Tano, they could have put Kit Fisto, they could have put literally anyone else, but they put BB-8, and that's life. Anyway, dark side characters. We have Darth Vader, Boss, Boba Fett, Emperor Palpatine, Kylo Ren, Darth Maul, Captain Phasma, General Grievous, Count Dooku, Iden Versio, which is the main character of the single-player story, you might remember, and BB-9E. Because yes, because clearly they put BB-8, so they had to put someone nearly as useless on the other side of the field. And now I dare you to tell me in the comments which movie BB-9E makes its appearance in, because that's the level of utility of a character we're talking about in here. Because I mean, there's no one else that they could have put in there from the dark side of the Force, clearly. Regardless, every character attacks in its own different and special way, and it moves and it plays in its own different and special way, and it's all incredibly amazing. The feeling that you get playing as a hero, it's so cool. Each one of them is different in the way you have to approach yourself to fight with them, either be with lightsabers or blasters or lightning. And even though you can use them in Supremacy and Galactic Assault, I believe the real place of the heroes is in the 4v4, 2v2 heroes against villain battles, where you can face light side against dark side. And it's so much fun, man. Like, even when you lose, you just have fun playing with the Force and with your beloved characters, or even if you don't care about the character, it's still fun to use the powers and the lightsabers and everything. Okay, it happens that sometimes the other team just pulls off a bunch of combos and it makes it unplayable, but that's like 1 game out of 10. But in general, it's so enjoyable to just hit someone with your lightsaber or shoot your Force lightning. And even though it takes you a little bit to get into the habit of playing, because each hero, especially if you're a lightsaber hero, has to be played in a certain way as to not die every 5 seconds. But once you get into the habit of how they play, you just start having these amazing duels with other players, which really give you the vibe of a epic Star Wars duel with lightsabers that you might have seen in the movies. And it's this really epic feeling which makes playing with the heroes just amazing in my opinion. And also, let's just be honest, throwing people off a cliff with Darth Maul, it's just something you do. Now let's talk about those 2 game modes that really deserve their own little mention in the video. Supremacy and Galactic Assault. They both play very similar, they both play fairly the same way, and the gameplay is almost identical, even though you have different objectives to achieve in each game mode. But in both of them, you start playing with the 4 basic soldier classes that we talked about earlier, and then you gain points as you play for completing the objective, going on a kill streak and stuff like that. And then you can use those points to buy TIE fighters, tanks, special class soldiers, and most importantly, the heroes, which then you can play against the enemy, and you can go and just have your little murder spree with Luke Skywalker, which I mean, always fun. The impressive thing about this game modes is the real feeling of being in a massive battle that it manages to convey. There's a real sense of being lost in a war field, where the sheer size of what's going on with 40 players battling each other in these game maps just makes it so that there's some war situations going on. Like sometimes you're just walking and you get shot by random shots going in the distance and you just get caught in one of those shooting situations. Sometimes you can play tactical, like taking people from behind or putting yourself in hidden spots so the the enemy can't see you when you're shooting at them. There's a real tactical aspect in the battle. When you assault an objective with 7 or 8 of your teammates and you're met with a strong resistance of 7 or 8 of the enemy's team, that's where there's a real pitched battle going on. And this feeling of scale and of being immersed in a real battle in the Star Wars universe is really impressive in the way the game manages to convey it, at least to me personally, and I think to a lot of other passionate people who enjoyed this game. The only negative aspect that I can mention about this is supremacy, because it can last hours and hours and hours due to its format, and I never finish one, I always leave, because it's just way too long. An interesting thing to know about the game is that originally it was a very EA game. Terrible. You had to pay for everything, and to unlock a single hero without paying, you had to play for more than 40 hours, which was insane. The game was clearly destroyed on social media as soon as it came out, and that forced EA to go back on the project. To make you understand the scale of it, the post on which EA tried to defend itself on the decision of making everything pay to win became the post with the most downvotes on Reddit. I believe dislikes are called downvotes on Reddit. If they're not, I'm very sorry. I don't use Reddit a lot. Please, thank you. After this massacre, EA went back and redid the game, and now the game is pretty enjoyable. And it's a pretty normal game, and it is as we described. They were introduced the system of progression that you would gain the cards with levels, as we talked about earlier, for the soldiers, which improved them, and all the heroes could be played immediately. So there's a certain satisfaction in seeing how a community forced a company like EA to go back and change a game which was an incredible cash grab and made it a pretty nice game that you can have fun with. And it's pretty satisfying to see something like that sometimes. So, in conclusion, there are still reasons why you might enjoy buying Star Wars Battlefront 2. The multiplayer modes and the feeling of being in a real Star Wars battle are the most enjoyable things and the most quality things that the game has to offer. Now, the single player campaign, as we discussed, is not exactly the best, but it can be a nice addition if you like the multiplayer aspect of it. And it certainly is enjoyable as a little side quest in the game, we can say. Star Wars Battlefront 2 still has the potential to be a game worth playing. I wouldn't advise you to buy it at full price, or huge price anyway, but if you find it on promotion or for free, or something like around €10, I'd say grab it. It's a nice game. It still can give you a lot of fun, especially if you like Star Wars, especially considering that in the future the number of people playing might keep decreasing, as we have seen, so we don't know for how long you can actually play the game and experience the game. So now it's up to you. Tell me what you think. Are you gonna get the game? Are you gonna try to experience it before it dies? Did you find what I've said of any way useful to you, or are you disagreeing with me in case you have played the game? You can let me know. Just write on the YouTube comments or on Instagram if you want. Everything is in the description. I thank you very much for staying with me and watching the video till the end. Kisses, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye bye! Nah, you're not in the game, man. I'm sorry.
Did they at least add that stupid impertinent tin of R2?
No, they didn't even put R2 in the game. Yeah, I know, no, he's not there.
Who did they add then?
Well, they put BB-8 in the game.
What the hell is wrong with them? I have spent time with Gungans that were more useful than BB-8.